Welcome to Goldman's Back 40 Podcast, a production of Goldman Equipment. We are your local John Deere dealer here in central and northern Louisiana. Give us a call or come by one of our 12 locations statewide and look us up on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or on our website at www.goldmanequipment.com. Goldman Equipment, we're not just in your field, we're in your backyard. Welcome once again to Goldman's Back 40 Podcast. We're coming to you from West Monroe, Louisiana, as always, in our studio here. And we have a very, very special guest with us today, Mr. Keith Dumas. And I'm going to let him introduce himself to you here in a second and tell you a little bit about him. But Gary, first off, how are you today, buddy?
Doing great, Rod, man. How are you doing
I'm
today?
doing wonderful, man. Doing wonderful. And it's good to be back here with you today. We're going to talk today about a pretty interesting subject, and it's pretty deep. You can get deep with it. We're going to touch kind of on the surface today. And torque versus horsepower is what we're going to be talking about, Keith. But first off, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, brother?
Thank you, Rodney. Well, I was the owner and operator of Engine Service Machine for about 18 years. We specialized in automotive rebuilding of engines, the small light-duty engines and race engines. A little more about my background is back in the 80s, I started motocross racing, and then I went from motocross to jet ski, and then from jet ski to car racing, which brought me into the machine shop business.
So you've got a lot of experience dealing with engines.
I do.
In several different disciplines, right?
Yes.
And all right, well, first of all, before we get into it, I want to take just a second because there may be a lot of people out there who don't really realize the difference between torque and horsepower.
That's right.
So let's quickly define the two. So what is exactly torque?
Well, torque is a measurement of leverage that it takes to get a vehicle or industrial equipment moving, whereas horsepower is more of how of a distance that you can cover in a amount of time. So the more horsepower, the quicker you can cover that point of distance from A to B. Whereas torque is more for getting that be either a piece of equipment or that car moving. Like torque times RPM equals the horsepower.
Okay, all right. Okay, well that clears that up. Let's talk about different marketing applications of this. And one thing I've noticed, Gary, you can chime in here. Why are dealers and manufacturers so intent on driving torque nowadays versus horsepower? Because, you know, in days past, all you heard was horsepower. But now you're hearing more and more about torque. So why is that?
Well, they're marketing payloads of what their vehicles can actually tow per the vehicle size, a 2,500, 3,500, you know, the payload keeps going up. Now, all these is with diesel engines primarily. Okay. So both Ford and Chevrolet has come out with 6.7 liter engines that has 900 foot-pounds of torque, and we just seen a new commercial from Chevrolet where they fly someone off in a helicopter and go up and take 30,000 pounds of logs going up a hill and stuff like that. So they're all marketing how much their trucks can be able to pull, because the campers are getting bigger these days. The race car trailers is getting bigger these days. Everything is heavier these days because of the size of it. So it's no different in the ag business. The tractors has gotten bigger. The disc has gotten wider. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. When you walk up to a 9R tractor, and you look up at it and you sit there and say, wow. I mean, just amazing. And then once you see a disc all folded out and everything, you just sit there and just amazed that thing can be dragged across the field. 30,000 pound disc. Just think about that.
At 12 miles an hour.
Yeah. So 30,000 pound disc is 15 tons. 15 tons. So it takes a lot.
So give us a little input on how torque and horsepower is done on the racing side.
Well, in the race application, you're dealing with a race car, whether it be a dragster or a door car, that weighs anywhere from about 1,800 to 3,000 pounds. Well, you're not really looking at torque because it doesn't take a lot of torque to get something like that rolling, especially on asphalt. Well, if your motor is 1,000 horsepower, peak is probably going to be 6,500 to 8,000. Well, in a race car, you can run a slipper transmission or a converter, and you can change your gear ratio to move that vehicle over the quarter mile or the eighth mile, whatever you're running. So when you leave the line, you actually can have that converter slipping at 6,500 RPM. So you put that engine in its prime operation level of horsepower. Whereas when you start talking about heavy equipment, horsepower is not really a factor. You need the torque because you're not going to go as fast. You're not going to spin as many RPMs. So you need that torque to get it rolling. And as Gary said, you start pulling that plow or that disc, you need something down low that's going to be able to drag it with the resistance on it.
Right. So in a racing application, the key is to get your acceleration as quickly as possible. In a farming application, Gary, it's about meeting resistance as well. And you've got a lot of resistance dragging a 15-ton disc behind you, don't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Through this gumbo mud and dirt in Louisiana.
And you're also operating at a lower RPM level with a diesel, whereas, a automobile engine or a race engine, you can operate, 5, 6, 7,000 RPM, whereas with a diesel engine, most of them are anywhere from about 1,800 up to maybe 2,500.
Let's talk about this engine here. Give us some specs on this John Deere 13.5 liter diesel engine and some things that kind of stick out to you.
Looking at this engine, we was talking about pulling 15 tons of a disc. This engine here that John Deere has is a 13.5 liter engine, which adds up to be how many cubic inches, Keith?
824.
824 cubic inches. That reminds me of an old saying. Only substitution for cubic inches is cubic dollars.
That's right.
And so.
Hey, and also now this is a 6-cylinder, inline 6, 824 cubic inches.
With a 5-inch bore.
5,200 bore.
Wow.
Look like a coffee jar going up and down the cylinder wall with a rod connected to it that's 6.5 inches long. Just think about that.
It's amazing.
So with that, at 1,800, this 13.5 liter John Deere engine produces 559 horsepower. But if you take it on up to 2,300, which is the advertised horsepower, if you take it on up to 2,300 RPM, it's 614 horsepower. You think that sounds a lot, don't it? Now, for an 824 cubic inch engine, in mine and Keith's world, that wouldn't be good. You want an 824 cubic inch engine producing 1,500, 1,600, 1,700 horsepower. However, if you drop on down and look at the maximum foot-pounds of torque on this engine, this thing puts out 1,629 foot-pounds of torque, which is unbelievable. So this thing has 614 horsepower and 1,629 foot-pounds of torque.
So what you're saying is this sucker will pull.
It's made to do one thing. It's made to pull. And the rotating weight within the engine and everything within that, I mean, it takes a crane to put it in.
And adding to that, looking over the spec sheet, we talked about where the turbo and the exhaust manifold is water-cooled. So that actually helps make more power, especially when you're talking about the humidity and the temperatures that we have down here.
That's right. The John Deere engineers, I mean, just every year when we keep seeing these tractors and combines coming to us that we're putting out in the field, we're just sitting there, we're just amazed by it.
Yep, absolutely. Had an interesting discussion today, guys. And Keith, thank you so much for joining us. And man, we've sure enjoyed your expertise and your input. If you're a farmer, we sure wish you a blessed year. And if you're not, we're so glad that you were able to join us today as well and this discussion. And we look forward to you joining us next time. Thanks for listening to Goldman's Back 40 Podcast, a production of Goldman Equipment, LLC. We appreciate your comments on the show, and please let us know you enjoyed the program by hitting the like button on Facebook and sharing with your friends. We look forward to seeing you back with us for the next episode. Until then, God bless you and your family, and God bless America.